Jesus, I surrender all to Him. I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him in His presence.
The 30th of December 1899, Volume 3. Effects of Humiliation and of Mortification. This morning I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little, and since obedience had told me to pray for a certain person, when Jesus came I commended her to him, and he said to me, "Humiliation must not only be accepted, but also loved, so much so as to chew it like food. And just as when a food is bitter, the more one chews it, the more he feels the bitterness, in the same way, humiliation, when it is well chewed, gives rise to mortification. And these, that is, humiliation and mortification, are two most powerful means in order to get out of certain hitches and obtain those graces which are needed. While it seems to be noxious to the human nature, just like the bitter food, which seems to do harm rather than good, so with humility and mortification, but it is not so. The more the piece of iron is beaten on the anvil, the more it sparkles with fire and is purged. The same for the soul. The more she is humiliated and beaten on the anvil of mortification, the more she sparkles with celestial fire and is purged, if she really wants to walk along the path of good. If then she is false, it happens all the opposite. End of the reading. The 30th of December 1902, Volume 4. One act contrary to the divine will is sufficient to destroy the work of Jesus in the soul. As I was in my usual state, I seemed to see the Most Holy Trinity as if they wanted to resolve what they should do with the world, and I was in their midst. It seemed that they were saying, "If most fierce scourges are not sent to the world, everything is over for it concerning religion, and they will become worse than barbarians themselves." And while they were saying this, it seemed that wars of every kind, earthquakes destroying entire cities, and diseases were coming down upon earth. On seeing this, all trembling, I said, "Supreme Majesty, forgive the human ingratitude. Now more than ever the heart of man has rebelled, but if man sees himself being mortified, he will rebel even more, adding outrages upon outrages against your Majesty." And a voice coming from their midst said, "Man can rebel when he is merely mortified, but when he is destroyed, his rebellion ceases. Here we speak not of mortification, but of destruction." After this they disappeared, but who can say how I was left? More so since I felt as though a disposition for wanting to go out of this state of suffering, and a will not perfectly conformed to the divine volition. I could see with clarity that the ugliest offence that the creature can give to the Creator is to oppose his most holy will. I felt pain for this, and I greatly feared I might be doing an act contrary to his will. But in spite of this I could not quiet myself. Then, after I struggled very much, my adorable Jesus came back and told me, "My daughter, many times I delight in choosing souls, surrounding them with divine fortitude in such a way that no enemy may enter into them. I establish in them my perpetual dwelling, and in this residence of mine I lower myself, one could say, to the most minute services. I clean her up, I put out all thorns for her, I destroy all the evil that the human nature has produced in her, and I plant in her all the beautiful and good things that can be found in me, to the extent of forming the most beautiful garden of my delights, to be used at my pleasure and according to the circumstances of my glory and of the good of others. So much so that it can be said that she no longer has anything of her own, but serves only as my dwelling. Now do you know what takes to destroy all this? One act contrary to my will. And if you oppose my will, you will do all this. And I, Lord, I fear that my superiors may give me the obedience of the other type. And he, this is not your business. I myself will deal with them. But your will is not present here. In spite of this, I could not calm down, but I kept repeating in my interior, what a dismal change has taken place in me. Who has separated my will from the will of my God, which seemed to be one? End of the reading. The 30th of December 1908, Volume 8. The Infancy of Jesus to Divinize the Infancy of All. I was meditating on the mystery of his infancy, and I said to myself, my baby, to how many pains you wanted to subject yourself. It was not enough for you to come as an adult, you wanted to come as a baby and suffer from the swaddling clothes, from silence, from the immobility of your little humanity, of your feet, of your hands. Why all this? While I was praying, he moved in my interior and told me, my daughter, my works are perfect. I wanted to come as a little infant in order to divinize all the sacrifices and all the little actions of infancy. So until children begin to commit sins, everything remains absorbed in my childhood and divinized by me. When sin then enters, separation begins between me and the creature, a separation which is sorrowful for me and mournful for them. And I, how can this be if babies do not have reason and are not capable of deserving? And he, first, because I give merit by my grace. Second, because it is not out of their will that they do not want to deserve, but because such is the state of infancy disposed by me. Besides, a gardener who has planted a plant is not only honoured, but he also picks the fruit of it, even though the plant does not have reason. The same for an artisan who makes a statue, and for many other things. Sin alone is that which destroys everything and separates the creature from me. But everything else, even the most trivial action, comes to the creature from me, and to me it returns, with the mark of the honour of my creation. End of the reading. The 30th of December 1916, Volume 11. How Jesus made us free in our will and in our love. The effects of this. Continuing in my usual state, I was thinking about the pains of my lovable Jesus, offering my interior martyrdom united to the pains of Jesus. And Jesus told me, my daughter, my executioners were able to lacerate my body, insult me, trample upon me, but they could touch neither my will nor my love. These I wanted free, so that, like two currents, they might run and run, without anyone being able to hinder them, pouring myself out for the good of all, and also of my very enemies. Oh, how my will and my love triumphed in the midst of my enemies. They would strike me with scourges, and I would strike their hearts with my love, and with my will I would chain them. They would prick my head with thorns, and my love would turn on the light in their minds to make me known. They would open wounds on me, and my love would heal the wounds of their souls. They gave me death, and my love gave life back to them, so much so that as I breathed my last on the cross, the flames of my love, touching their hearts, forced them to prostrate themselves before me and to confess me as true God. Never was I so glorious and triumphant. as I was in my pains during the course of my mortal life down here. Now, my daughter, in my likeness I made the soul free in her will and in her love, so others may take possession of the external works of the creatures, but no one can do so with her interior, with her will and her love. I myself wanted her to be free in this, so that freely, not being forced, this will and this love might run toward me, and immersing herself in me, she might offer me the noblest and purest acts which a creature can give me. And since I am free, and so is she, we might pour ourselves into each other and run toward heaven, to love and glorify the Father, and to dwell together with the sacrosanct Trinity. Run toward the earth, to give good to all. Run into the hearts of all, to strike them with our love, to chain them with our will, and make of them conquests. Greater dowry I could not give to the creature. But where can the creature make greater display of this free will and of this love? In suffering. In it love grows, the will is magnified, and as queen, the creature rules over herself. She binds my heart, and her pains surround me like a crown. They move me to pity, and I let myself be dominated. I cannot resist the pains of a loving soul, and I keep her at my side like a queen. In the pains, the dominion of this creature is so great that they make her acquire noble, dignified, ingratiating, heroic, disinterested manners, similar to my manners, and the other creatures compete to let themselves be dominated by this soul. And the more the soul operates with me, is united with me, identifies herself with me, the more I feel absorbed in the soul. So as she thinks, I feel my thought being absorbed in her mind. As she looks, as she speaks, as she breathes, I feel my gaze, my voice, my breath, my action, step and heartbeat being absorbed in hers. She absorbs all of me, and while she absorbs me, she keeps acquiring my manners, my likeness. I keep gazing at myself in her continuously, and I find myself. End of the reading. The 30th of December, 1917, Volume 12. Sorrow of Jesus because of those who steal affections and hearts of creatures from him. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen, afflicted, and he was lamenting for the many who steal affections and hearts of creatures from him, by putting themselves in his place within the souls. And I said to him, My love, is this vice so ugly that it saddens you so much? And he, My daughter, it is not only ugly, but awful. It is to turn upside down the order of the Creator, placing themselves on top and myself underneath, telling me I too am good at being God. What would you say if someone stole 1 million from someone else, rendering him poor and unhappy? And he should either give it back or he would deserve condemnation. And Jesus, yet when they steal affections and hearts from me, it is more than stealing 1 million, since these are material and low things, while those are spiritual and high. If one wants, millions can be returned, but not those, never. So these are irreparable, uncancelable thefts. And if the fire of purgatory will purify these souls, it will never be able to return and fill the vacuum of one single affection which they took away from me. Yet this is not taken into account. On the contrary, it seems that some go along selling these affections, and they are happy only when they find a buyer who would purchase someone else's affection without having any scruple. They have scruples if they steal from creatures, But they steal from me and do not give it a thought. Ah, my daughter, I gave everything to creatures, and I said, take anything you want for yourself, and for me leave only your heart. If this is denied to me, not only this, but they even steal the affections of others. And this is done not only by secular people, but also by sacred persons, by pious souls. Oh, how much harm is caused by certain directions too sweet, by certain unnecessary compliances, by too much listening using attractive manners. Instead of doing good, they form a maze around the souls. And when I am forced to enter into those hearts, I would rather run away, in seeing that their affections are not mine, and that their heart is not mine. And this from whom? From one who should reorder the souls in me. On the contrary, he has taken my place, and I feel such nausea that I cannot stand being in those hearts, but I am forced to stay until the accidents are consumed. What a slaughter of souls! These are the true wounds of my church. This is the reason for so many ministers being snatched from churches. And no matter how many prayers they say to me, I do not listen. There are no graces for them. Rather, I answer them with a sorrowful cry from my heart. Thieves, move, go out of my sanctuary, for I cannot stand you any more. I was frightened, and I said, placate yourself, O Jesus. Look at us as the fruit of your blood, of your wounds, and change the scourges into graces. And he added, things will go forward. I will humiliate man to the dust, and various sudden and unexpected accidents will continue to occur to confuse man even more. Wherever he believes to find escape, he will find a tie. Where a victory, a defeat. Where light, darkness. So that he himself will say, I am blind and I don't know what else to do. The destructive sword will continue to devastate until everything is purified. End of the reading. The 30th of December, 1927, Volume 23. How Jesus makes himself seen while sowing little lights in the field of the soul. Reason for the silence of Jesus. Immense value of the manifestations on the divine will. Divine and human characters. I was all abandoned in the divine volition, according to my usual way, following its acts. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, my beloved Jesus has reduced himself almost to silence. He speaks so very little, even about his lovable will, as if he did not want to say anything any more. Who knows whether he will put a limit and will cease to speak also about what regards his fiat? At that moment he made himself seen in my interior as a little child, clothed with light, in the middle of a field, while taking some light from his lap and sowing it in that field with many drops of light, all silent and content on the work. And seeing that I was surprised, he told me, my daughter, all that you think now, you have thought from the time you were writing the 16th volume, that I would cease to speak about my divine fiat. But I was doing nothing but sowing the field of your soul with many drops of light, that germinating and fecundating in your field from little lights have turned into suns. These suns are the many surprising manifestations that from that time until now I have made known to you about my will. Oh, how beautiful was the field of your soul, invested by these suns, one more beautiful than the other. It transformed completely into a divine field. All heaven was enamoured by this field, and in looking at it, it felt its happiness being doubled. Now one who has sowed has the right to harvest, and since it is a divine field, I am the owner of it, not only to harvest, but to sow it again. So I am doing nothing other than sowing it again. Don't you see how I am all intent on the work of sowing seeds of light into this field, so that as they germinate, the new sons of the knowledges on my will may come out? And work brings silence, and my silence is warmth, maturation, and fecundity, in order to transform the little seeds of light into more effulgent sons. I work in you always, either in one way or in another. The work of my divine will is long, and therefore I am always occupied, and I keep you occupied. So let me do and follow me. Then I felt all the weight of the silence of Jesus. I felt exhausted of strength, and I felt faint. And I thought to myself, why do these knowledges on the divine fiat require so much work of Jesus and so many sacrifices? And Jesus, coming back, clasped me tightly in his arms to strengthen me, and added, my daughter, if I wanted to work for a whole eternity in order to manifest a single knowledge on my divine will, it would not be enough. In fact, the value of a single one of them is such and so great that if you wanted to make a comparison to see what contains more value, whether the starry heavens or the sun, the sea, the earth, one single knowledge of mine has more value than the whole creation together. In fact, my knowledge is of immense value, infinite and without limit. And as it comes out of us, wherever it reaches, it generates and multiplies to infinity the good and the light it contains. It is the true regenerator of the divine life. On the other hand, the creation does not contain an immense virtue, and it is limited. This is why I spare neither work nor sacrifices, because I know all the value it contains, and the space in which I deposit it becomes for me my divine field, my throne, my altar. And my jealousy of love is so great that I never leave her free, and I work always to keep her all intent on me. What to say then, if instead of one single manifestation on my will, they are so many as to impearl her as more than a heaven with many sons of my will? Think about it yourself, my daughter, and appreciate a good so great, a seed so fecund in the field of your soul. Then I continued my acts in the divine volition, and since it was the rising of the day, I was saying to my lovable Jesus, your will envelops everything, and oh, how I wish that just as the sun rises and invests all the earth with light, so may the sun of your will rise in the intellects, in the words, in the hearts, works, and steps of all creatures, so that each of them may feel the sun of your fiat rise within herself, and letting themselves be invested by its light, all may let it dominate and reign in their souls. At that moment my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and told me, my daughter, in the soul there are two characters, the human and the divine. The divine descends from the unity, and in order to receive the divine character, the soul must live in the unity of my will. In this unity she forms her acts. They rise in the unity of her Creator, in that single act of God that is such that, while one act alone is formed in God himself, the light of this single act descends down below, invests everyone and everything, and embracing everything, gives to each one the act that is needed by multiplying to infinity the multiplicity of all possible and imaginable acts. Therefore, as the creature does her acts in this unity, they acquire the divine characters, that while it is one single act, they enclose all acts together. Oh, how beautiful it is to do everything with one single act! Only God has this virtue so powerful that with one single act he does everything, embraces everything, gives the operating to everything. What great difference between the divine and the human character! The human does many acts, many works, but the creature remains always encircled within her acts. It seems that they have no light to extend and diffuse to all. They have no feet to walk. Wherever they are done, there they do remain. So as much as a creature might do, her acts are numbered, restricted, and therefore the character of the human operating is so dissimilar from the operating of the divine unity and from one who operates in it, that it is easily erased and remains without seed of fruitfulness. This is why I want the soul to live in the unity of my will, to make her acquire the divine characters that are indelible and eternal, and like light, they diffuse, they expand, they multiply, they give themselves to all. Even more, they have supremacy over the acts of all. If you knew how much pleasure the divinity takes in seeing your littleness rise in the unity of the one divine act that never ceases, to unite your acts within our one single act, you to give us your own, and we to give you our own, and to impress in you the character of our single act, you put us in feast, and we feel the happiness, the joy of having created the creation. So in order to be more attentive, you must be convinced that your living in our will is the feast that the creature can bring to her Creator. And the more acts you do in it, the more times you renew our joys and our happinesses on your part, and bringing us the whole creation on your lap, you give us the glory and the requital of love for its having been created by us. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.